image in their children. And I want to help you understand how you got caught in this vicious cycle in the first place. The defeated perfectionist can be set free from discouragement and failure, and I'll show you how. Now, I've already told you that I'm a psychologist and that I've counseled thousands of people over the past 30 years. But don't think for a moment that I'm going to approach the subject with the cold and detached eye of a clinician. I'm not going to be writing from some lofty ivory tower and use only words you might find in Reader's Digest under "It pays to enrich your word power." I haven't always been a psychologist, and I wasn't born with a doctorate degree. When I write about the feeling of not being able to measure up, believe me, I know what I'm talking about. For instance, when you hear the word undistinguished, you might as well think of my high school career. I graduated a gimme putt from the bottom of my class. I was in a reading group in elementary school where one kid ate paste and two others continually smiled for no apparent reasons. I was a college dropout who worked for a while as a janitor in a hospital. The head nurse there took my future wife, Sandy, aside and told her not to go out with me because it was clear I was never going to amount to anything and that she was wasting her time with the likes of me. I'll tell you more about this later. And I'll have to admit, at the time, that looked like some pretty good advice, but I'm awfully glad Sandy didn't take it. Take it from one who knows. What's my point? Only that I know what I'm talking about, not only on the professional level, but on the personal level as well. When you're starting out on a vacation trip, it's one thing to look at all the colorful brochures and believe what they say. It's another thing to take the advice of someone who knows where you should stay because he's been there himself. Well, I've been there. I'll talk more about that later on, but before we go further, I want to assure you of something else. People who see themselves as not being able to measure up are often some of the most intelligent, attractive, and productive people around. If you're one of those who are troubled with thoughts of inadequacy, you're in some pretty good company. I remember Joanne, for instance, who was warm, intelligent, and absolutely beautiful, with soft golden hair, Carolina blue eyes, and a perfect smile. It was hard to find the slightest flaw on that face, and the rest of her was not bad either. She was the sort of woman who couldn't walk into a crowded room without causing several male heads to turn in her direction. Her looks, coupled with her sparkling personality, made her a most eligible and sought-after young woman. But she never saw any of that, and her charming personality was only a front. Beneath the surface, she was miserable, sad, and lonely. She considered herself to be a terrible failure. She wanted desperately to find a man to love her, or at least she thought she did. But even though she had many relationships, they always ended in disaster. The truth was that Joanne, like many others I have counseled, was caught up in the self-perpetuating cycle of not being able to measure up. She unconsciously sabotaged every one of those relationships because she had grown so used to living in a world of broken dreams. It could be that this is what has happened in your life. Sometimes you don't know whether to laugh or cry, and you often feel like doing both at the same time. It doesn't matter how strong you are. Sometimes all it takes to get things rolling in the wrong direction is one or two setbacks. We begin to see ourselves as losers, or at the least we begin to think that some mystical forces are aligned against us, so we might as well be resigned to lives of defeat and futility. That, in essence, is what had happened to Joanne, and she had to come to see that there were no real obstacles standing in the way of her lasting happiness, only her own decisions and choices based on the way she subconsciously perceived herself. I remember Jim, a good-looking athletic man in his mid-30s. He was intelligent and successful in the world of business. Jim had been married once, but it had lasted less than 5 years, and since then he'd had a succession of unsuccessful relationships. He was no playboy either. He wanted desperately to find a woman with whom he could share his life. He loved children and wanted to have a family, and it scared him to find that he was still alone with no prospects at 37. He was just like Joanne. Everyone around him saw him as successful and self-assured, but he had come to believe at a very early